I am 79 years old, and I am still grieving a life I never lived. Not the life I had, the life I was too afraid to reach for. I want to say that carefully,
Because I don't want you to misunderstand me. My life was not a tragedy. I had a home. I raised children. I worked for decades at a job that paid well enough. By most measures, I did what was expected of me, and I did it reasonably well. But there is a version of me that never existed, and I think about him more now than I ever thought I would. When I was 26, I wanted to move to another city. Not for any grand reason. There was just something pulling at me, a feeling that my life was somewhere else, waiting. I had saved a little money. I had no real obligations yet. I could have gone. I didn't go. I told myself it wasn't practical. I told myself I'd do it later when things settled. And things never settle. I think I always knew that, but it was easier to wait than to move. I met my wife the following year. She was kind and steady, and she loved me in a way I didn't fully appreciate until much later. We married young. We built something together. I want to be clear that I do not regret her. I do not regret our children. What I regret is the man I became inside that life. Careful, controlled, always managing risk, always making the sensible choice. There was a version of me that painted. I had done it since I was a teenager. Not seriously, just for myself. On Sunday mornings, before anyone else woke up, I would sit at the kitchen table with cheap brushes and whatever I had, and I would paint things I'd seen during the week. A tree at the edge of a parking lot, the way light came through the blinds in the hospital where my father was recovering from something minor. Small things. My wife encouraged it. She never once asked me to stop. I stopped on my own. I told myself I didn't have time. And I didn't, not really. There were children to raise and a mortgage to pay and a career that demanded more every year. So I put the brushes away. I told myself I'd come back to it. That was in 1977. I did not paint again for 31 years. The thing about a slow loss is that you don't feel it happening. It doesn't announce itself. Nobody sits you down and says, you are becoming less than you were meant to be. You just wake up one morning in your 50s and realize you cannot remember the last time you did something purely because it made you feel alive. I became very good at my work. I was respected. I was promoted. I was the kind of man other men pointed to when they talked about doing things right. And I think I mistook that for meaning. I think I told myself that being valued at work was the same as mattering. It isn't. My children grew up while I was optimizing. That's the only word I can find for what I was doing. Every year I was optimizing something. The mortgage, the retirement account, the next step at work. My son used to ask me to come to his weekend football matches, and I missed more than I attended. Not because I was careless, because I had a report due, or a trip, or something that felt urgent. He never said he resented me for it. He didn't need to. There was a period in my 60s when I started to feel the first real edges of this. My wife and I had more quiet in the house than we knew what to do with. The children were grown and gone, which is as it should be. But I remember sitting across from her at dinner one evening and realizing that we had not had a real conversation, the kind that goes somewhere, in a very long time. We had been managing a life together. We had not been living beside each other. I didn't say anything that night. I should have. My wife died 4 years ago. She had been ill for 2 years before that, and I was with her. I was present in a way I had not been for much of our marriage. I cooked. I drove her to appointments. I sat beside her and held her hand, and I was finally the person I think she had always needed me to be. And she was gracious about it. That is the word. She never said, Where was this man for the last 40 years? She received what I gave in those last years, and she was grateful. That is the kind of person she was. But I knew I had waited until there was almost nothing left of her time to show up fully. I knew that the presence I was offering at the end was the presence she had deserved from the beginning. I knew, and I couldn't say it out loud, and I still carry it now in a way I don't quite have words for. What she needed from me wasn't grand gestures. She needed me to sit down, to stop moving, to look at her like she was worth stopping for. I was so busy being responsible that I forgot to be present. After she died, I moved to its smaller house. My daughter helped me. My son came for the first weekend and then had to return to his own life, which is right and normal. I don't blame them. I live alone now, and in the silence of that, I have had more time to think than I have in decades, more time than I know what to do with, honestly. And what keeps returning to me again and again is not the big moments. It's not the promotions I didn't take or the trips I didn't book. It's smaller than that. It's the Sunday mornings I could have painted and didn't. It's the dinner conversations where I was physically present but somewhere else entirely. It's the feeling, which I cannot explain fully, that there was a self inside me that I never gave permission to exist. A quieter self, a more honest one, a man who might have made less money and achieved less on paper and been far, far more alive. I don't know who that man would have been. I never let him out long enough to find out. I started painting again about 8 years ago. A neighbor was taking a class at a community center, and she asked me if I wanted to come. I almost said no. I nearly did. Old habits. I went. I was terrible, genuinely bad. My hands were less steady than they had been, and my eye wasn't what it was, and everything I put on the canvas looked like the work of someone just learning. I kept going. I go every week now. I am still not particularly good. It doesn't matter. There is something that happens in that room with those people that I do not experience anywhere else. Something that feels faintly like the person I might have become if I had given him permission earlier. It is not a redemption. I want to be careful about that. I am not going to tell you that I found myself at 71 and everything is fine now. That would be dishonest. There are whole decades I cannot reclaim. There are conversations with my wife I will never be able to have. There are years of my children's lives I was in but not present for, and they are adults now with their own complicated memories, and I cannot go back into those years and do them differently. That is the part that grief does not prepare you for. Not the grief of losing people, though that is real. The grief of the life you did not live, of the self you did not become. That grief has no grave to visit. It has no date on a calendar. It just sits with you quietly at the kitchen table in the mornings. If you are young and you are watching this, I want to say something to you, and I want to say it without performing, without sounding like someone who has figured it out. I haven't figured it out, but I know this. The thing you keep postponing is not waiting for you indefinitely. The conversation you are not having, the person you are not being, the life you are living at half the depth you are capable of. Time does not feel finite when you are in the middle of it. I remember being 40 and feeling like I had decades. I did, and then I was 60 and felt the same. And now I am 79, and I can feel the edges of things in a way I cannot fully describe. Not fear exactly, more like a quiet acknowledgement that the space is closing. I am not asking you to be reckless. I am not asking you to abandon your obligations or throw away what you have built. I am asking you to ask yourself honestly whether the life you are living is actually yours, or whether you have been so careful, so responsible, so busy managing the shape of things that you forgot to live inside them. That's all. That's the thing I wish someone had said to me when I was young enough to do something about it. I still paint on Tuesday mornings. Last week I painted the light coming through the window of my small kitchen, the same kind of thing I used to paint 50 years ago before I put the brushes down. It's not remarkable. It won't hang anywhere. Nobody will remember it. But I was there making it, and for an hour I was fully inside my own life. I am 79 years old. That hour matters to me more than I can tell you. If something in this reached you, I'm glad. That's all I wanted.